All right. Can everyone see the presentation right now?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, welcome everyone to the third Space Decentral community meeting. And in this meeting, we're going to have a few announcements, and then we'll be talking about the working groups, the space mission ideation process, a little blurb on sharing the slice of the pie, and then we'll break out into discussion, going around and trying to hear input from each person here, especially Space Decentral community members first on what your thoughts are on how things are progressing or how you want to get more involved. So basically some announcements. If you were in Telegram before, you're seeing that we're starting to migrate more into Riot, at least for project discussion, collaboration, anything for actually being an active part of the Space Decentral community. The other announcement, we mentioned this in the Telegram a few weeks ago. There hasn't been a blog post about it yet, but a few, about 4 of us are involved in this grant from this organization called Aragon. If you're not familiar with them, they are an Ethereum-based organization that's building a tool for governance for decentralized organizations, and it's a platform that Space Decentral will be using in the future for its governance. And we got a grant to build a planning app on top of their system, and this is an application that we will also be using for our organization as well. So a lot of us have been really busy working on that, so the development on that has just began about last week. The other thing in general has to do with collaboration tools. As we start to collaborate with the community more, we'll be doing the task management on GitHub. So why we choose GitHub is because first, it's good for open source projects. Even though it is heavily related to software development, the task management system is still there and can be used for non-software related tasks. It's free, so regardless of how many people join our community, everyone can always participate without paying a licensing cost. I know that there are nicer tools out there for task management, such as Asana, but the problem with using something like that with an open source community is every time someone wants to join, they would have to pay $10 a month or something, and we just want to make it super easy that there don't have to be decisions for someone to start to collaborate. So that's why we're using GitHub for task management. If you ever have any problems or if you want more information on how to use a tool, don't be afraid to ask any of us, whether it's in the public chat or in private messages. Just we want to make this as seamless and easy as possible. So if you feel overwhelmed, never be afraid to ask questions. And the other thing has to do with meetings in general. We could talk more about this in the end, but I'll be talking more about working groups and how, for people that do want to get more involved, we can start to have more regular meetings around the different working groups. And community member Eric has also made suggestions to me on how maybe if we had more drop-in co-working type sessions. So this is something that I'd like us to talk more about at the end of the meeting, but I just wanted to kind of bring that up right now. So the 2 working groups that we want to start with activating weekly meetings around are Future Forward, and that has to do with the general everything related to space missions and how we can come up with that strategic plan, whether it's defining what are the best categories for the programs, and how should we decide on how it gets filled up or how we prioritize things, and then Future Forward is also the organizing body for the space mission ideation process that we'll be talking more about next. But essentially this is just the super kind of high level planning body of the agency. So if you want to kind of be more involved with how things work in relation to space missions, or also ideas around how can we design a common wiki for every mission, things that will help us, get more organized and, efficient when it comes to space mission planning in general. So that weekly meeting, we'll be announcing the date for that, hopefully by next week or so. We want to start it within the next week. So we'll be sending a poll to start to see, who wants to be involved in it, and maybe see different times based on the leader of the working group as well. And then the building blocks one, we are going to do that on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Pacific time. And building blocks is a lot about spacedecentral.net, the development of the platform. People can also come into the building blocks meetings if you want to just talk about features or things that you think would be helpful. And then it's also about, integrating the platform with decentralized apps or even migrating it towards a decentralized infrastructure. And also how we can start to add an engineering toolkit into the platform. So things like models-based systems engineering tools. And that's about how you start to kind of create common models, and you tie those to requirements. And so whenever you're doing like documentation for a mission, it kind of all traces back to an engineering design. I mean, Sean can talk more about that since that's his pet project, but that's what building blocks will be about. It's essentially software development. So those are the two working groups that we're going to start to activate, and we are looking for volunteers that want to help lead our other working groups. Some responsibilities would just be, figuring out optimal meeting times for people to meet, maybe just kind of helping with a monthly report in our blog for some of the progress that's been made, or even like helping outline tasks for the community members to help with. So feel free to reach out to us in private message or in one of the Riot channels for these working groups if you want to be more involved. And there was also a blog post about it, and you can read that as well. Okay, so then next, the space mission ideation process. So this was also announced in our blog post a few weeks ago, about the one that was called Kicking Off the Inaugural Space Mission Ideation Process. And this is something, in some ways it's still being worked out as far as the details on how voting is going to work or how projects may be judged. So this is why we're activating the Future Forward working group in parallel, because we wanted to kick off a process and not kind of like have the community stagnate, or for there not to be any when can an idea actually become part of the space program. So we wanted to start to kick off a template, but at the same time, it's an experiment. So things are still kind of being tweaked in parallel. But that's why it's like for the proposal development phase, that's going to be about 2 months. But this is just a way for people to start to submit ideas that would be included in the Space Decentral program, essentially. We're not, I don't know if we're at a good stage for people to submit, businesses to be funded, unless in the proposal development it describes, the solution for how that would work within a decentralized network. So it's kind of like I said, this is an experimental process. The rules of it still are kind of loose, and it's about kind of using this symbiotic process for people to kind of help define how it can work and how it can fit into like this Space Decentral ecosystem, how things can work in an open source manner. So a lot of this is experimental, but essentially the proposal development phase, we've tried to kind of keep the things that you needed to add into the proposal somewhat like generic, more at the idea level stage. Well, why is this important? Why does it fit with what we're doing? So people can form teams around these different proposals, and then to submit, to develop the proposal together, and then there would be like a presentation newsletter after the submissions are done that essentially sends a newsletter out with all the different ideas so people know, what's a contender. And then there can be a community meeting where there are further smaller, more like feedback or questions around the different ideas. And then outside of the community meeting, there will also be feedback and review within the forum. And then after that, projects will get vetted. Like if it doesn't exactly fit into the current model or the current requirements of the different categories, those might get removed from the vote. And then we have a vote, and essentially there would be 3 categories right now. And the goal is to have at least one project activated per category. And project activation essentially means that it is added to an open source repository. It's added to the Space Decentral program. There will be tasks created based on this project, and then the community can help develop the mission. So it's winning it is it becomes an official project of the network, and people, including, anyone part of the community can start helping with the tasks. That's why I'm saying this isn't a traditional business plan type of competition, since it's submitting an idea to the network that will be crowdsourced in an open manner. So that's what it says, task planning, begin crowdsourcing. So we think that the task planning, that will probably be done at least on a monthly basis, where you plan out the tasks for the monthly sprint. People might join the community, and the amount of people that are helping might change every month. So that's why, doing it on a monthly basis as opposed to planning your tasks out for the entire year, that might not really scale. So it says task planning, begin crowdsourcing, but yeah, so that would be an iterative process for the task planning. So that's just a brief overview about, the space mission ideation process. And then the other thing that we had mentioned in our pilot experiment blog post was about how people can, earn tokens by, either completing some of the open source tasks or by submitting an idea that gets added to the program. I'm not going to go too deeply on that in here. If you want the link to that blog post, let us know. You can share it in the chat right now too. But if you have any questions about tokens and how they fit into everything, feel free to always discuss it in Riot and the R Space channel, or send us a private message. So we didn't want to kind of go too deep into that in this meeting, since the last meeting was a lot about tokens. But yeah, so that's just that. And then yeah, so that kind of concludes the presentation. And what I wanted to do now to begin with is kind of go around and hear from each person, what are your thoughts on the space mission ideation process? How can we improve in general? How can Space Decentral improve? What do you feel most passionate about getting involved with? Any other feedback? You don't have to answer all of these questions. If you just have feedback or have a comment, feel free to say that. But I think we should probably start off with maybe about 3 minutes maximum each person, to hear from each person, and then we can have a more organic discussion after that as well. And in this process, you can also, if you had any questions about anything that I just said, feel free to just type your questions into the chat, and then we can kind of go through the questions after each person starts to give just in general, feedback and what their thoughts are. So I don't want to start off with people asking questions, but just kind of people talking about what they think about the process, what concerns they have with submitting ideas or anything in general. So let me just exit this presentation. Okay. And maybe I will just name off people from the list. Abhinav, I'm just looking at the top of the list.
Hey, hello. So this is my first time in the community meeting, and I think it's a very good idea. And a decentralized space agency sounds really cool. Although I'm not sure, is there going to be a cap on how many people can join, or is it going to be uncapped and more like open source, community based kind of thing?
I'm going to write down the questions that people are asking, and then after we go around and each person talks, we can go through the different questions. But that is a good question. I would just say no, in general, there's not going to be a cap, but there would be kind of a limited amount of tasks and probably competition around who can help with the tasks, because we're limited as project managers. Like as a decentralized space agency, if you don't have enough project managers to help define the tasks, then there's no way to get everyone's help that might want to help. So there's just like a human limitation for that until we have an AI solution. But yeah, so if people have questions, I mean, I don't know what people think, if we should just answer the questions right away, but I just answered it, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and okay, so then did you have any other, had you read about our space mission ideation process before?
No, I just read about the link that I saw on Facebook of the 7 steps or 8 steps that you just explained.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it's cool. Like, I don't have any more questions right now.
Okay, cool. Okay, Eric, do you want to talk? I know you sent me some comments through chat, but if you wanted to say anything during a meeting as well.
I think I'm empty for now, so.
Okay, that sounds good. Jorge?
Not for the discussion, not for this part, but if you on the meeting Dennis discussed the Holy World, I have definitely some questions.
Okay. Otto?
Yeah, well, I am still reading all the materials and the white paper. So for now, and I am still learning, and I'm okay.
Okay. Yadi? Okay, first time here. Okay, so I mean, I guess it seems like we can just open the floor for regular discussion or regular questions or projects that interest people. If anyone wants to just kind of have an open forum to talk about anything. Okay, I see one question in the chat. What is the idea for obtaining participation from those who work at government/private space companies, specifically science or engineering folks? What do you mean by private space companies? Do you just mean like just industry in general? Because there are people that have like joined our community, and the thing is we don't expect, like we do expect people that do already have aerospace jobs to participate in the community and help out with things. Like we did have one community member, this guy Craig, and he works for Lockheed, and he seems interested in like working on projects too. So I think it'll be kind of up to the individual to decide kind of like on their free time how they want to spend to work on Space Decentral or not. The other aspect has to do more in general with partnering with private space companies, or whether it's like to collaboratively design a spacecraft or to do something together. We don't see why that wouldn't be possible as well. It's like because there will be we as a the founding members of Space Decentral, it's like we do have an official corporation called Space Cooperative. If that's ever needed to interface with the real world or partner with other corporations, But we also think of Space Decentral as an organization that can have multiple corporations, whether it's multiple startups, partnering with larger companies, or I guess working with governments. That's just something that it's not like we're saying no, it can't happen, but it's like there's nothing that's limiting it besides our own collective decision-making process. So Jorge, you said you wanted to talk more about Hollyworlds. I mean, we can do that right now too. What were your thoughts around it?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Yelda. Well, you say you are like looking for, or the ideal case would be like to have like different project managers for each block, let's say, right?
Yeah. Each of the different working groups.
Yeah, the working groups, right. So as you know, I want, and I'm a little bit contributing to the Holy World, but I cannot spend like the leadership on this part right now. So I would like to know if on this community call is someone like would like to be like more involved, helping with this reaching community, a bit of branding with the meetups, with the little bit of the working group of the Holy World. So anyone in there?
I can't say I have any media experience, so I can't volunteer for that. But you are bringing up a broader point that we've discussed before, and I'm curious what you think about it. And that broader point is this. When people are proposing ideas, both within Hollyworlds and more generally in the different both engineering and non-engineering projects, we were discussing what kinds of requirements for these working groups would, for lack of a better word, kind of give it the best shot of coming to fruition. And one of those things was whether one of those requirements should be that a proposed project has a team leader already named. So that way, if the idea does get a lot of popular support among the community, and it does end up being we added to the network, as Yalda was outlining in the presentation earlier, that there's already a person who's in charge, and we don't end up with projects without a leader but have popular support. So I'm curious how you think the best way would be to kind of address that. Or anyone else here for that matter.
Well, maybe I think Yalda should have a bit more like a better perspective regarding these micro project management strategies, maybe.
What was it? Micro project management strategies?
I think Patrick was discussing about not just the Holy Worlds as the big conglomerate of different projects, but I think, and let me know if I'm wrong, Patrick, but what I understood is the different projects inside Holy Worlds.
The question applies to both scales, because there's management at every level, of course. But yeah, I think I meant to generalize it, so it could apply to either context, whichever you'd like to focus on first. If I heard you right, too, were you suggesting that there is some sort of posted or formal guidance on project management for people who would like to step into that role?
No, like a couple of weeks ago, I was preparing like a small and simple strategy for people who wants to build community locally and physically into the ecosystem of Space Decentral. So we create a meetup guide for people who wants to start their own Space Decentral meetup locally. So that will be like one strategy among many others to start creating community and resources and knowledge around the Space Decentral in a physical way, like in contact with people.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Having a Spanish chapter and a Los Angeles chapter, the Warsaw chapter, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'd love to read more about that guide that you wrote.
I'm gonna copy the link on the chat. You can take a look at it.
Great, thanks.
Jorge, if I may suggest, since I mean there aren't very many people present at the meeting today, but maybe if you announce on Riot or on our forums that you're looking for someone to help with the leadership of the Holy Worlds, maybe you might reach more people that way.
Sure, I'll do it. Thank you.
Maybe even saying what some of your ideas are. Be like, I created this meetup guide. Here's a link. This is what I think we should do, but my time is limited. I can only kind of spend this much. So looking for someone else that wants to help lead it, something like that. I think that would be good.
Okay.
And that actually applies to the ideas that we want people to propose. If you look at the schedule that Yalda showed at the beginning, the first step is team formation. You're not really required to form a team, but you can just start chatting on Riot and in our forums. Just pitch your ideas, see if there are people interested in teaming up with you to develop this proposal so that you have a better constructed proposal by the time that the deadlines come. That might be a good idea too, for everybody actually.
Does anyone else have thoughts to chime in on this process?
Does anyone already have an idea that they would like to discuss or pitch in?
I don't have an idea, but I had a question. So whenever there's the project deadline and after the is it reorganized? Are they reorganized into other projects?
I'm not sure if everybody was able to hear that, but
I think his audio went out for a second.
Yeah, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I'll repeat. So after the deadline, 3 projects will be chosen that the organization is going to work on as a whole. So the teams whose projects are not chosen, will they be reorganized as part of other projects?
So that's something that it's still an unknown as far as ones that weren't selected, because I think there's still like the people that are passionate about an idea. They still have the freedom to form a group around people that want to help with that. It's just these are the fine details that we need to work out as far as, well, where does it fit within the network, because we think that there still needs to be this kind of element of like competition to get your idea added to the Space Decentral like official network program, because that ties into some of the financial incentives that we're going to put in place with cryptocurrency and tokens and that kind of thing. So that's why there can only be a limited amount of winning ideas. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense from a game theory standpoint. It's like there has to be someone that's winning, someone that's getting something for submitting their idea. But that's not saying, oh, you can't host your project on your own GitHub repo and then ask the community to help with it. We do want to have different features and pathways for that at some point in our network too, but it's just going to be a process until we can start to meet all of the needs. This initial process is really about the open source Space Decentral program. But like I said, in the future, there can be different processes where it is like more about like business incubation, or more about people have ideas and they want to find people to help with them outside of the Space Decentral space program. So yeah, in the future, I think there will be like more pathways for that. But right now, the whole point of the process is for it to kind of be officially added to the network program, so we can start to build incentives around it.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Abhinav, on a personal note, I'm just curious, since you said you're in Houston, are you part of the local NASA space industry there?
Oh, no. I'm a student at the University of Houston.
Oh, cool. Nice.
He is one of the students of the program that I'm in.
Oh,
Space
nice.
Architect. Yeah.
Awesome.
But he's doing a double degree.
Yeah.
Space architecture and aerospace engineering.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You graduating this semester too?
No, I graduate next May.
Nice. Best of luck.
Yeah, so the other thing that I wanted to bring up, and then just start to see what people think, because this is one that we have to work out too. Like I said, Space Cooperative, like a lot of the people on this call were part of Space Cooperative. We were the founding company essentially behind Space Decentral, but Space Decentral is still this kind of entity that is not an official corporation or anything. But space, like, we also have a lot of different mission ideas ourselves, and we're just trying to figure out, okay, well, like this is the tough part to figure out with respect to voting and how that's going to work, and how and we want to like make that process open as well, with like the team formation around the ideas that we have. So this is why I'm starting to think that maybe it might not make sense to vote on an idea until the voting tokens are like really decentralized, that we wouldn't have a majority vote to select our own ideas. But this is just like stuff that's being like worked out. I guess what do people think in this call that aren't part of Space Cooperative? If you guys are like, oh, they're going to be submitting ideas to each of the categories, like how is that going to weigh against our ideas? But also like realize that anyone that's part of the Space Decentral community can also form teams with anyone else, you know, whether they're members of Space Cooperative or not. But I wanted to just start to hear what people's thoughts are on that, because we don't want to make this just, oh, we're organizing Space Decentral, submit your ideas, we'll select them. Like we want to be just as much as part of the process as any member of the community. So I wanted to start to hear what people's thoughts are on that, because one thing that I was thinking is if we start to think of it more, instead of voting, you do it like based on like consensus. If we just change the way voting works for the different categories, where, you know, people can present the different ideas, but you meet about them and you just have to come to consensus with the people that are engaged in that that category, essentially. So that's one potential solution, but still it's like the founding members can potentially still have more like mental weight on it. But I wanted to hear, any concerns from the external community on that. If anyone had any. Jorge?
No, I'm trying.
What was that?
No, I don't have any thought about it.
Do you have any, like, you're like, oh, I don't think this will be a problem, or you're like, I don't know, or sorry, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
To kind of, if it helps put everyone on the spot, I guess maybe we could go around and ask, like, what do you personally hope to maybe get out of the community? Excuse me. Like whether it be just working on software development, or maybe you're more interested in the governance side of things, or you just want to be part of some cool space mission that's going to be asteroid mining or building a lunar village or whatever it be. What would you like to see happen within maybe the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 years?
Well, let me go for this one, Sean. What I see, or what I believe it would be a great approach for this, not just in what I would like to see, but what I believe Space Decentral looks like to the external community. And I'm sure you guys who already have been working on this for much longer than me, but that would be like the platform for enabling people who wants to build this. And I'm talking with the perspective of Ethereum, since I was like in the very beginning of building Ethereum, and especially like helping the community. And for me, it was very clear Ethereum would be the toolbox. You know, I didn't expect the team behind Ethereum like start building dApps, start building. So I'm not sure, especially regarding space projects, which are massive in terms of investment or talent or resources. I would expect like a super engaged and passionate community of people who's building the sandbox and the toolbox to prototype my space project and build it. So when we talk about let's start doing projects, maybe it's because I've been only following the project a couple of months and you've been already working on this for 1 or 2 years. But for me, and again, I'm not a space professional, but it really seems to me like the projects we try to accomplish regarding space activities, I don't think if we are like ready to deliver like proper network of resources and funding. So in my opinion, there is a bit more work to be done regarding like creating strategic partners with other projects and communities that are already doing things similar to a Space Decentral. There is nothing like a Space Decentral, but there are communities of people who are trying to connect space entrepreneurs with space angels or other people who's doing research outside the academic classic files. So if you understand Ethereum, what it has now great is a huge community from developers, entrepreneurs, marketers, and I would focus efforts in this sense, you know, in building like a proper toolbox rather than already being proposed, let's mine as asteroids right now. You know, for me, in my opinion, it's a bit too early for this.
Yeah, I think those are good.
Mentioned, which is called the building blocks, is precisely, I think, about what you just said. It's about building a platform, which is kind of a sandbox, toolbox thing, meant to connect people, possibly companies and groups, organizations.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I guess the way that we want to do this is more in parallel. We know that there are people that are already joining our community and they are interested in the ideas or the knowledge base, and other people that are more interested in developing the technology. And just because all of the tools aren't ready yet doesn't mean we can't begin the research, for example. So that's why even with this project proposal process, the project, I mean, what you'll initially start with is more like research, literature review, developing a knowledge base, just like outlining the system. So we don't see this initial project activation process as like, yes, we're going to build an asteroid mining vehicle right now, but more like, let's do a feasibility study to determine what the best asteroid mining mission is, or how do we analyze, like, you know, it can be like, you know, research projects, which might make more sense. So we don't really have that much direction written around that right now. But in the next iteration, we might start to kind of give more examples of, okay, well, what makes sense now? Because one thing that, you know, Susie has been talking about a lot, and the community, like what we're trying to do is build a wiki. And so as people start to help with researching the different missions, it can be cataloged in this like common knowledge base. It's like, okay, we don't need a fully blockchain like wiki solution to develop that wiki yet, because it's a knowledge and information gathering thing. You can start to maybe use GitHub to manage it, but you know, that's why it's like we can do the research and information gathering in parallel to building our technology. So then as the ideal, like, you know, sandbox or toolkit gets developed, like we're not just like waiting 5 years and then we're like, okay, let's start our space mission research now. It's like we want to have different things happening in parallel, so we are kind of being in touch with the industry and not just being a technology, like a software development company or just like a software research company. So that's why it's like, yeah, there are some differences with Ethereum and the early days of it, such that it's like, you know, recognizing, yes, there still needs to be a lot more, you know, development work blockchain related things, but at the same time, we don't want to just like starve off the people that are interested in the space missions and the research around that. So we're trying to create this environment where we can like kind of work together more in harmony without people like waiting or thinking, oh, since the technology is not there, we can't collaborate. Well, actually we can. Like,
yeah, definitely. The primary mission of Space Decentral is going up to space, right? But in our specific case, we are not. We are trying not only to just go to space because well, SpaceX did it, kind of. We want to create something so new that we have to actually, in parallel, do both. Think about space, then think about ecosystem, think about tools, create the whole new thing, basically. Maybe not from scratch, using different tools that are already there. But yeah, it's a big project with many different aspects to it. So yeah, in parallel.
I think it really highlights the like kind of the limitations of current space programs too. Is the government space programs, they have to be their direction. I mean, we paid, U.S. Taxpayers pay taxes, which 0.5% goes toward NASA, and the executive branch gets to decide where that 0.5% gets funded. But every 4 years, a new president comes in, and they have to like shift gears every once in a while, and so they can never really get anything done because the head on top can never make up their damn mind of what they should invest in, right? Should we go to the moon? Should we go to Mars? Should we do Leo? Whereas private industries have a little bit more flexibility and can be a little bit more, disruptive in the sense that they can experiment with new ideas because they don't have that limitation, right? But at the same time, with private industries, you're limited by funding. You have to, live in the U.S. or whatever. You have all these other like minor restrictions. With Space Decentral, we almost have no barriers. Like the governance or the hierarchy is that there is no hierarchy. It's governed by the community. The community gets to decide whether we should go to Mars or the moon or whatnot. And the community gets to decide what specific like tool sets we should develop that like all these other companies aren't really like investing in because they have all these like all this red tape they need to go through. So it's really an enabling, I think, platform for the community to get back the power to really do what we want with space. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here.
That's probably true.
But yeah, thanks, Jorge, for bringing up your comment. Like, I think it was really good.
Yeah, no problem. Just, you've been working on this for a much longer time, so sometimes it's hard to me to put me in your mind, like what is everything going on and how you see like the long term. I know everything is constant communication through the Telegram, through the forums, but still these community meetings helps also with this.
Yeah, no, that's great. And yeah, we always, welcome any questions or feedback, just because it's good to hear what other people think and for us to just talk about it. And yeah, I guess it's like we were working on the white paper for how this network is going to work for almost a year now. And it could have been a process where we're just like, okay, let's just keep working on the white paper, developing this and never launching. It could have been dragged on for so long, but at a certain stage we were like, okay, we just need to launch, because this is we have to take this from, it was just internal. It was okay, for what we're doing, we might not have everything fully baked right now, but it needs to be unleashed, because it's not it doesn't like really fit within the ethos to kind of stay behind closed doors for that long. And even right now, like the white paper, the only reason it's not like fully released to the public yet is because it's just like we just want to make sure it's like crystal clear that it's like it's not like a secret how everything's going to work. It's more like let's make sure that whenever we do present it to the public, it's like polished and it makes sense and people aren't criticizing it that it like sounds bad. So that's like one of the reasons why like we haven't fully released the white paper to the public right now, not because we're in like stealth mode with what we're doing, but just because we want to make sure that it's good. So that's just like the side of us that was like, okay, almost like a year working on the white paper with different iterations, and then like the development platform, it's like, yeah, there are like bugs and a lot of improvements that need to happen, but it was just like we're just kind of limited with our own like resources right now, with people just putting in time outside of their like other life obligations, whether it's like university or other full-time jobs. So it's like there's just like a limited amount that we can do, but we didn't want to have that stand back from us starting to grow our community. But it does like but it's still like we have those limitations still right now, due to it being very much like volunteer driven right now, is we can't really ignite as much with growing the community, because there are a lot of different projects and things going on. So we're trying to figure out how to like streamline that, start to raise some amount of funding to have more full-time resources too. So yeah, that's what we're trying to work on.
Do we have time for a mind jam? Or are we supposed to end earlier?
I think a mind jam would be fun. Do you want to describe what a mind jam is?
That's true. So I guess context for most people here is, for those of us who live in Los Angeles, California, we held these semi-monthly events. We held meetups, and we would end the meetups with these mind jam sessions where we would pose a philosophical question related to the presenter's topics, usually, that is at least tangentially related to space, and then pass around a microphone to the people there, who were usually pretty talkative because of the free pizza and beer. And then we would just talk it out and see what people think about a random philosophical question. Is that enticing at all, or does that just sound...
Oh, definitely.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And then this mind jam, I went to an ESA type event, and that's when like we lifted the idea from a European Space Agency. Like Jan Werner was doing this for the Moon Village. So I was like, oh, okay, like that would probably work well in a meetup setting. So we didn't invent the mind jam as a group activity.
Giving credit to credit where it's due.
Yeah.
In case ESA is listening.
Yeah. So what's the question or the topic?
I think Susie had a good suggestion a while back, that we could pick. Susie, do you want to say it?
Sure. Is it this last one that I typed?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, should extraterrestrial colonies be governed by Earth-based entities, or should they govern themselves? What are your thoughts on that?
By extraterrestrial, you mean that the people there are...
They're not like they're not on Earth.
But
Not
they,
aliens.
but people from Earth went there.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like colonies on the moon or Mars or in orbit.
In the belt.
I think that they would start off with some kind of operating procedures of how things would work while they're on Earth, and then they'll get there, and then I guess they might just, I assume that they would have laws for how they would change their governance. So they should, yeah. I don't know if they'll be allowed to, though, if all their resources are supplied by people on Earth. So until they become self-sustaining, they might have to follow mission control.
I guess the first thing would be who actually sends the people there to form the colonies. If that's corporations, there will be corporation law in force, right? If it's governments, it will be whatever government managed to send people up there. And I can totally see it taking like full declaration of independence at some point to actually break free from Earth's law and governance.
I mean, they kind of propose a governance structure in Artemis, don't they? Which is, for those who don't know, it's Andy Weir's next book, which isn't in sequel to, but it was written after the Martian of a lunar colony. Sometime a couple years from now, they based their governance on an 1800 like frontier town, right? And I think the motivation for why people would go there is for tourism. But like the currency, I think for what they use is the amount of the cost it would take for shipments between Earth and the Moon would be like their base currency. Trying to tie this back to governance, though.
That was kind of a corporate governance situation with government strings kind of dangling above the puppet.
Yeah. In space, we're already like unregulated, aren't we? Because it's not like we can borrow governance ideas from like the whatever country we originated from, but in terms of like actual regulation, there is no regulation. It's technically maritime law.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever hear about the Skylab mutiny?
Which one was that?
I think it was the first of the 3 Skylab missions operated by the U.S. in the early 70s.
It was the last one.
It was the last one. My mistake.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know about it too, huh?
Well, I read it.
Was it U.S. or U.K.?
U.S.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The U.K. is the only country to ever develop orbital capability and then voluntarily give it up. Unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah. But with the Skylab mutiny, the astronauts were given too many tasks by NASA, and they quote unquote mutinied by just not doing those tasks and taking personal time. And at the time, there's not much NASA could have done about it. But when they returned, they were essentially treated like U.S. soldiers who violated the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and they never flew again, to my knowledge. Also, I guess NASA could have just not picked up their capsule from the ocean. But that's an extreme case of arm twisting for space governments, huh?
Not picking up their caps tools would have sent a negative message to the community, to the world population. So they would have to pick it up.
That's true.
But that actually scares me to think of a corporate run. I mean, a corporate run colony, because if you decide to mutiny, or in that case it would be a strike, if you decide to strike, the corporation can simply let you die. They don't really care, right?
I think that would be bad publicity, so you probably would have to keep your astronauts alive.
I don't know, I'm scared of that.
Well, the stock would go down, so I think it's in their best interest to keep the people alive.
But they can always cover it up because they would have like lots of resources.
To just say that it was like a space storm or something.
Yeah. Like nobody can investigate from Earth.
Good luck getting a press pass on Mars, huh?
Someone could send some rover.
That's true. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a physical member of the press.
Yeah, maybe that's a service we should be offering. Rover press people for the moon.
But who watches the watchers?
What is that quote from? Or what is that?
I mean, generally it's from anti-surveillance state rhetoric, but I forget what the specific source was.
That is ancient.
Huh?
I don't remember the Latin quote, but it was from the ancient times.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Everyone Googles?
Oh. Quis custodia ipsos custodes. Yeah.
That one, yeah.
From the Roman poet Juvenal, from his satires, which is from which century? From the second century.
Second.
Nice. Or first or second, yeah. Dang. Well, any further thoughts on Space Mutiny? It sounds like people are ready to wrap up.
Yeah.
Any further questions on our presentation? Well, you can always join our channels, our Riot rooms, and our forums, and just discuss ideas there. That's what they're for.
I think it's worth reiterating that like this ideation process isn't a full-on. It's not meant to be taken as like a NASA SBIR level proposal or anything like that. It's more of if you're familiar with the TRL, technology readiness level, or the CML, concept maturity level, it's very much level one. Just what is the very low level concept worth maybe exploring as like a feasibility study. It's not like a full-on like concept that's ready to go into prototyping or anything like that. It's very much like behind the napkin type of ideation process, in case anyone was intimidated with like the form or anything like that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's conclude the meeting then. And yeah, if you have any suggestions or ideas around more meetings or less meetings as well, I think I did send out. We already got information from like Jorge, Otto, and Eric because we were talking and kind of private about that. We were starting. Susie started this survey, but yeah, if anyone else. I don't know if there are that many other people in here, but Abhinav, any other ideas around like meeting times, more or less, like, let us know. And like we said, we're going to start to do the different working group meetings. And then we'll probably try to have another community meeting like this, maybe in a month or whenever we're presenting the ideas. It really just matters, how much there is to present in a meeting, because we do want to move more of the meetings to the working groups and people getting involved more. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and have a good night, good day.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys.